What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Slight change to the programming for today. We're in the middle of NFL season, but NBA star point guard Damien Lillard has been traded from the Portland Trailblazers to the Milwaukee Bucks. So we have called up fan favorite NBA correspondent, friend of the program, Clint, to come on and help Matt and I break down the trade. We're going to go over the details of what it means for each team. And then stay tuned at the end. We're going to wrap up the last 15 to 30 minutes of the podcast with some NFL talk from week 4 of the NFL season. Coming off another really interesting one, a lot of blowouts this season. We got to start measuring that and see if there are more blowouts this season than in years past, because I feel like a lot of games have not been close. So Matt and I will wrap up with Scolds and Bolds from week 4 of the NFL season. We'll give you the eliminator pool pick because we are cruising through the eliminator pool. Hopefully you guys have been following that. But for now, Clint and Matt are coming on to talk Dame trade. Let's go. All right, we are back. Matt is here. And then returning to the program for the first time since the NBA season ended, NBA correspondent Clint. Guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I mean, it seems like I'm doing better than Jimmy. So
Jimmy's in a dark place right now, man. And I feel like our NFL fans are going to be in a dark place with this podcast as well, because I promised that this would happen a couple months ago, that we would be getting into NFL season. We'd really be going, just chugging along with football. And then Dame would get traded and we would just halt everything and go right back to a Dame trade podcast. For those who don't know, or for those who need a reminder, a few months ago, Dame went to the Portland front office and demanded a trade specifically to the Miami Heat. Portland held out for the last couple months in order to get a better deal because Miami was lowballing them, really not giving them much of a good offer by all reports. Milwaukee kind of comes in out of nowhere. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I never suspected Milwaukee. They were never on anybody's radar.
yeah,
really.
never heard any rumors, nothing. Just like total dark horse.
Even my future brother-in-law, my sister's fiance, who's a huge Bucks fan, was like, this is shocking, out of nowhere.
They struck like a true predator, right? Like you didn't see him coming.
The true predator of the forest, the deer.
Exactly. The book.
But Milwaukee comes off the top rope, out of nowhere, to acquire Dame. Really becomes a 3-team deal. The Blazers get DeAndre Ayton, the center from the Suns, Toumani Camara, Drew Holiday, a 2029 unprotected first from the Bucks, and then 2 future pick swaps with the Bucks. The Suns get Grayson Allen, Keon Johnson, Nasir Little, and Yusuf Nurkic. And then in a separate deal, the Blazers send Drew Holiday to Boston for Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, 2024 Golden State first-round pick, and then Boston's unprotected pick in 2029. So the final comp for the Blazers, they send out Dame, they get back Ayton, Robert Williams, Kamara, Malcolm Brogdon, who they're probably going to flip soon for more picks or players or something. 3 first and 2 swaps, which I think is a hell of a lot better than Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson in a first. Just going to throw that out there to start this off. A lot going on here, a lot of moving parts. What was your initial reaction to this trade? What did you guys like when this first came across your desk? What was your first thought?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised too. And then my next thought was, well, there could likely be like a new top dog, depending on how well Giannis and Dame mesh.
Mm-hmm.
At least in the East. When we're talking about the rest of the trade, I don't like looking at what the Suns got. I was kind of confused. I mean, like, do you hold on to Grayson Allen or do you get rid of him? Like, I don't know if I'd want him eating up cap space and, you know, that kind of thing. Nurkic could work maybe. I think that he's in a little bit better position than Ayton was, because he's not a prima donna. But like, I think Milwaukee definitely got catapulted to the top of the Vegas odds to be one of the winning teams at the end of the season.
Yeah, funny enough, the Bucks make the trade. They instantly become the favorite to win the NBA championship. Couple days later, Portland flips Drew to the Celtics, and the Celtics take over the number one spot to win the NBA championship. So it's funny you mentioned the Suns, though, because I feel like all the discussion the last couple of days has been how good is Milwaukee with Dame? Look at what Portland got back. And that's absolutely the headliner for this trade. But my first thought when I saw the full trade was that seriously, why are the Suns involved in this? And why is that all they're getting back for DeAndre Ayton? It like they have to swallow Nurkic's contract, and I know all three of us like Nurkic to varying degrees.
Yeah.
But he's never healthy. You got Grayson Allen, Keon Johnson this year. Like, I get the Suns are trying to add depth and role players, but I just was very, very confused about why they got involved until I remembered that they fucking hate DeAndre Ayton.
Yep.
Like them not liking Ayton, I think was like the first kind of thing that they were looking at. But like in return, I don't really think that like, okay, so you look at a couple of those guys that they got back, it's like those are liabilities. And, you know, I don't know if they're what the contract or money situation looks like, but if they could improve that or like get those guys to not be fucking dumbasses for one season because they're playing with some of the league's best players. And that's one of those things where it's like, I don't know how Grayson Allen responds to being around the guys that he's going to be around now. But I don't think it's going to be that great because he's played around guys who have had that kind of cachet too. So it's like, is he going to mature a little bit? I would hope,
No.
but I don't believe that it's going to happen. And then as far as like Nurkic's health stuff is concerned, I mean, playing in Portland, like, what's your incentive to be healthy? And I say that kind of joking, but at the same time, it's just like you're not playing for anything. So, like, I think the incentive of, hey, I could be a very valuable asset to a team that could be a championship contender, or at least a contender to go to the Western Conference Finals. I think that that's like a hell of a lot more incentive than being on a really bad team and just like playing for the sake of playing.
The way I see it with him on the Suns, it's less about like the incentive and more, hey, they have a hell of a lot of like high-end talent on that roster. They don't need him to play 30 minutes a game in the regular season when his body gets the wear and tear. If they can get through the season with him playing 20 minutes a game and have him healthy for the playoffs, he's a better fit for what they need than Ayton is.
Yeah.
Plays really good defense. He's a solid passer. He's got range on his shot. Like,
I mean, they ain't gonna need him to score though. Like,
no.
And that's kind of where like the defense and the passing would be where I would want him. If you're gonna play a little bit of a stretch or whatever, you can kind of move the court open a little bit with him.
Right. But I mean, okay, so the defense is gonna like really try and stop KD or Booker or possibly even Beal, right? So how do you make the defense pay for that?
Really hard screens.
That too. But like also have your five just be able to kind of like slip into the open area and hit an open shot.
This is my favorite part of the NBA coverage on this podcast is that Dame gets traded to Milwaukee, creating a potential new super team. Player empowerment is potentially getting curtailed in the NBA. And we're like, here's 15 minutes about Nurkic's fit with the Phoenix Suns. I do seriously just feel like someone busted into the Phoenix Suns GM's office. It was like, hey, Dame's getting traded. We have an opportunity to get rid of DeAndre Ayton. We have to take it right now because they hate him there.
Oh, yeah.
They would have taken like picks and a fucking bag of Cheetos for him. It didn't even have to be like the big bag. It'd be like the little ones that you get at the convenience store.
They would have taken a 2030 second round pick and an empty bag of Cheetos.
They probably feel like they made out like bandits right now. They're like, we got rid of Ayton and we got something back for him. This is the greatest trade in NBA history. This is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to the Lakers part 2.
There.
The first thing DeAndre Ayton did when he got to Portland is went on a podcast and said that he wants his new nickname to be Dominatin'. And I was kind of like, kind of see what the Suns felt. Kind of see why they didn't like this guy. So
you don't make your own nickname, guy. What the fuck are you doing?
Especially not a bad one. Players having their own podcast is a bad idea. We've been over this. Let's go back to the headliner from the trade, though. So Dame to Milwaukee to team up with Giannis. It's an all-in move for the Bucks. Honestly, like you look at their salary cap situation, they're paying $180 million for the guys they have: Giannis, Middleton, Dame, Brook Lopez. A lot of the salaries only go up over the next couple of years. I mean, Matt, in your opinion, does this make them the team to beat in the NBA?
I mean, I don't know if I could really pick one team as the team to beat, but they're in that class. We already would have said walking into the season, having Giannis on your team already makes you a potential contender. You upgrade from Drew Holiday to Dame Lillard, and that's not a shot at Drew Holiday. Dame has one true guard in the NBA that we can definitively say is better than him. The other guys that you might say that I would also say are wings. Steph is the only like true guard that you're going to say like, yeah, for sure is better than him. I was talking about him in our top 30, Dame. I went on about how efficient Dame has been over the last like 5 to 7 years in the pick and roll. Imagine how good that's going to look when the roll man is Giannis.
Yeah, I was going to mention something about that. So I think I was like talking about this with somebody at Fanfare on Friday when we were like playing cards, and that like the individual that I was talking with mentioned, well, like Portland wasted him in his prime, and it's like he might be older, but he is a hell of a lot smarter than he was when he initially came into the league.
Yeah.
And when you have someone who doesn't have to shoulder the entire fucking load of your team, they're going to get a little like revitalized and they're going to get rejuvenated. And when you have somebody else who you can count on to just fucking ram the ball down the other team's throat, I think that bodes very well for you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like Giannis is going to do what he does inside. And if he's able to continue to work on his like mid range or get out a little bit, that's going to make him even more dangerous. And I can't imagine he sat around this summer, like just enjoying life, spending his money. I would imagine he was in the gym because he wants to get chips. And with acquiring Damian Lillard, I think that like Giannis could even slide into like a little bit of a different role where like they're both just going to make each other better. And I think that that's like the really fun part of it. Now, how long does it take for them to mesh is like a question or a concern that I would have. And then like the next thing is just like players being healthy. Mm-hmm. You don't want to see something that like happened with the Lakers when they got Steve Nash and Dwight Howard and everybody got fucking hurt within like the first month and a half of the season.
Yeah.
So like I am very, very cautiously optimistic. I want to see Giannis do well. I want to see Damian Lillard do well. I would like to see Dame win a championship because I think like he's busted his ass and he's like really put in the effort. Like Portland did him zero favors. So I think that like this is kind of like the time for him. And I'm hoping that they can pull it together. And with the roster that they have currently, I think they have a very, very, very good shot at that.
Obviously, for both of them, it's the best player that either of them has ever played with, the other one. I don't know if it's the best duo in the league, but there's certainly an argument to be made that they will be next season. I think like you'd put them up against Booker and Durant and maybe like LeBron James and Anthony Davis, depending on how you feel.
I would not go there. Like, I think that those guys will run them off the fucking court. Like, I think age is going to catch up to LeBron.
One of those duos plays defense.
That's true too.
Yeah. So I think the kind of underrated thing for Milwaukee, though, is that the biggest problem they've had in the playoffs the last couple of years is that they don't have a consistent number two behind Giannis on offense. And Middleton like can do it. Drew Holiday can do it, but it was never consistent. And on any given day, it would be like, okay, Giannis is the one, who's going to be the two? And everybody's just kind of staring at each other. You definitely do not have that problem anymore. Now, instead of having like a 1 and, maybe a 2, maybe a 3, maybe a 4, depending on the night, you have like 1A and 1B in Giannis and Dame, and you still keep some depth with like Middleton. You got Brook Lopez. Like, it's not like they're completely barren of talent around these guys. I think Dame will fit in really well with that team. I think like, just like Curry, the thing that Dame brings to the table, the distance shooting and the ability to score from all over the court, that's only going to make things easier on Giannis. Like, he's never had somebody who could stretch the floor like Dame does and open up stuff for him down low. So, yeah, I think like the duo is terrifying. I have some concerns about how this team works, but I think the upside is obviously NBA championship for the next year or two.
One of the things that kind of jumped into my head here too is, let's look at historically how teams have tried to stop these two individual superstars in the playoffs. The book on Giannis, build a wall. Just don't let him get to the rim. The book on Dame, all right, let's blitz him at half court. Okay, how are you going to do both?
You're not.
You can't. You don't have enough bodies on the floor. So, like, teams are just going to be in a really tough position of picking their poison and hoping that their guys can win their one-on-one individual matchups every now and then.
This is an opportunity for like the Middletons, those guys on the team to have like easier shots because there's not going to be as much pressure on them.
Yeah.
So it's just like go out there and do your thing. Like you don't have to be the like the hero of the game now. It's funny how we were saying like you didn't even have a 2 option, and it's like, yeah, it kind of reminds me of just like having J.R. Smith, except like they're streaky shooters and they'll let that shit fly whenever, but like you can't count on them to be reliable. And now like it doesn't matter if they're reliable if both of your stars are healthy. What's the saying? Like rising tide raises all ships or something.
Yeah.
So I do believe that that's like what that's going to do. And I'm excited to watch. I think it'll be really good basketball. And if they move the ball as well as like half as well as Golden State did when they were in their heyday, I think they are going to be very, very dangerous.
I think it's really, really important that Middleton is being pushed into a very clear number 3 role, not is he the number 2? Because when he's on, he's dangerous, right? But he is maddeningly inconsistent. Like, he is the most inconsistent player that is capable of putting up like 20 points per game. Having that guy push down the ladder a little bit and like potentially more importantly, being able to focus on his defense a little bit more could actually help the team more than he did in that quasi number 2 role.
Yeah, that's the thing about this trade. And that's kind of where my concerns start coming in is when you look at this, you're like, the offense, like Damon, Giannis, the offense, how are you going to stop them? But you also just traded away one of the best perimeter defenders in the league for a 33-year-old point guard who is a negative on defense. And I think that's being nice about Dame in Portland the last couple of years. And it's like, so our perimeter defenders are now going to be Dame. The 2 guard spot is like Malik Beasley, Marion Beauchamp. Like, it's not going to be great. And Middleton, who's, okay. I mean, maybe if he's able to focus on his defense a little bit, he gets a little bit better. So, I mean, I'm definitely concerned on that side of the ball. It might not matter if you could just beat everybody like 180 to 150, but it's a perimeter oriented league, and your 2 best defenders are like rim guys.
And this would be like pie in the sky, hopeful kind of whatever. I think Giannis could kind of step out on some lesser tier perimeter players, but like you got Drew Timmy on there now. Like, I think that offensively he's not going to be like the biggest threat, but I think he'd like be able to play defense on some bigs in the NBA. And once he gets his like legs under him and that kind of stuff, like I've liked what I've seen from him in college in that regard. Like, I've never seen him horribly out of position or anything like that. So if they needed to, they could stretch that a little bit. However, that's a lot to ask from a rookie. You still got like Brook Lopez in there. Yeah, like I just think that there's a lot of like really good things. The other thing that I would say too is like, again, I'll go back to the Portland thing. Like, how incentivized to play really hard defense are you when you're competing for the fucking second to last spot in the league, or in the West rather? Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, these guys can play harder in Milwaukee, but I just don't know when you're going up against the Jason Tatums and the Kevin Durants and like these guys that you're going to have to beat, you're going to have to stop them in order to win an NBA championship. I just don't know that Milwaukee has the pieces to do that right now. And maybe it changes by playoff time because they're going to be a hot destination for buyout guys, and they can probably swing some deals during the season. But it's like, okay, we got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown tonight. Let's throw Jay Crowder and Malik Beasley out there. We're going to see how this goes. It's not great, especially for a guy like Tatum who already torches Milwaukee when they play. So I'd be concerned there. My other concern is just that I don't think that this trade guarantees that Giannis is going to stay in Milwaukee long term. They have to go all in because like this is your window right now, right? Like Dame is in his 30s, Middleton's in his 30s, Lopez is in his mid to late 30s. Like your core is older, except for Giannis, who's 28. But what happens when the core starts aging out and Giannis is like, hey, you guys, you built around me. I appreciate it, but it's time for me to go. And now all of a sudden this team is completely bottomed out and Portland owns all of your picks for 28, 29, and 30 when you're starting to hit this like really bad stretch. So it's definitely a mortgage the future trade. And none of it's going to matter if they win an NBA championship in the next 2 years. It's basically like what the Rams did to get Matt Stafford in the NFL, where it's like, hey, we're going literally all in. And if we win, who cares? But now that we're a couple of years removed from that Super Bowl, we've seen the Rams like have to pay the bill for that. And the bill will come for this for Milwaukee. It's just a matter of if it's worth it or not. And if they win a championship, it's totally worth it.
You have like you basically kind of have switched positions with Portland in the sense that like, okay, they tried to do this and they fucking squandered that opportunity. Now they're in the process of rebuilding. So Milwaukee gets to have like their shot at it. However, where would you rather be if like you're just thinking, you know, I'm a new player coming into the league or I'm like a veteran guy? Do you want to be out in fucking Portland or would you rather be in Milwaukee?
I mean, it depends because like from the Portland side of this, I love this deal for Portland on so many levels. I mean, Matt and I have been very critical of Joe Cronin throughout the history of this podcast.
Deservedly so. He earned that.
Oh, yeah. No, he earned it, but he's also earned this because he played the situation literally perfect, in my opinion. I think Miami clearly colluded with Dame to get him to Miami. Cronin tells him no and follows in the footsteps of like Daryl Morey and Sean Marks and the other GMs who have told superstars, I'm not going to trade you right now. We're going to wait and we're going to see how the market develops. Because he knows that like these guys know that the players are going to get impatient and that there's going to be back channeling going on. They wait it out. They take all sorts of crap from the media. Everybody's pressuring him. You got to trade him to Miami right now. You got to do right by Dame. You have to do the right thing and send him where he wants to go. Cronin says no. He waits. Dame gets impatient and has his agent tell other teams like, oh, hey, guess what? Dame will also play for you. As soon as that happens, he pulls the trigger and gets a much better return than anything that was on the table from Miami. Part of the return is Drew Holiday, and he says, hey, Miami, watch this. I'm not only going to strengthen Milwaukee, I'm going to strengthen your other biggest competitor in the Boston Celtics and give Drew to them for not nothing, but definitely not what Drew Holiday is worth. So, like, not only does he get an awesome return for Dame, he gets to massive middle finger at the Miami Heat. Like, you will never convince me that a big portion of these deals was not a giant fuck you to the Miami Heat. And I love that journey for Joe Cronin. I've like been marking out for Joe Cronin this week. I love it.
It's like a Stevie, like, as he's like fucking over the Miami Heat.
The best part about this for Cronin too is that like the beginning of the summer, it was like, oh man, Pat Riley's going to make Joe Cronin look like a schmuck. You know, the only person who looks like a schmuck right now? Pat Riley. Yeah. Cause if you're in the Miami Heat locker room, if you're Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, you got to be looking at your management and being like, one of the best players in the league demanded to come here and you couldn't pull it off.
Yeah.
Like we were just in the NBA finals and Dame could have very well been the missing piece between us, like not only getting back, but potentially winning it this year.
Mm-hmm.
He demanded to come here. He said he wouldn't play anywhere else. And you had months to do this and you couldn't get it done. I would be pissed if I was in that Heat locker room right now. And I think like the only person with egg on their face right now is Pat Riley. Because like Joe Cronin, you play it perfectly. You get an awesome return. And guess what? You did do right by Dame. You did it. You traded him to a contender. Yeah. You got him to a great situation. He's going to be happy. He's going to play with Giannis, who's the best player he's ever going to play with. And you got a lot back for him.
Part of why everyone was like, oh, yeah, he's got to play with Jimmy is that, like, it's culture fit, right? But, like, Giannis is also a culture fit. And going and playing with, like, any other star isn't necessarily a great fit.
I think, like, Giannis already taking care of business and getting one is like that would instill way more confidence in me if I was going to play with somebody, because I'd be like, hey, like this guy knows what it takes. They've done it. And that's not to say that like the Heat are a bunch of like schlubs, because they're certainly not, but like Jimmy's been to the finals twice, right? And he hasn't won either of them. If I'm looking at it from Dame's position, I would probably like venture to bet that, you know, I'd want the guy with the experience. Now, the really important question that I think I want answered is, what is James Harden's excuse going to be when he gets his fucking ass handed to him by Damien Lillard? Because, like, he can't just say, well, he's 7 feet tall. He doesn't have to be skilled. So, like, what's James Harden going to say? That's what I want to know.
I feel like James Harden is one of the most interesting stories going into the next NBA season, because I think that like literally anything could happen with him at this point. He was like, he posed for a picture in a club the other day with a sign that says Daryl Morey lied. It's like,
how do you get into the club with a sign? And it's not like, show me your tits or something. It's Daryl Morey lied. What world are we living in?
I could see Harden just like completely coming out and just tanking the season like he did in Houston. I could see him like,
are we gonna get
faking
fat
an
James Harden back?
Yeah, we're gonna get fat James. Like he could fake an injury. He could come in like super out of shape and be completely incapable of playing more than 15 minutes. Like I'm just here for all possibilities. It's amazing. But just going back to the original point from Clint, if you're a new guy coming into the league, where do you want to go, Milwaukee or Portland? I say all this to say that I think Portland has a much brighter future now than they've had in quite some time. Looking at, the roster is Scoot, Simons, Sharp, Grant, Ayton, Williams, Thibault, Murray. They're going to flip Brogdon for maybe some young guys. Like, is this a future title contender? Who knows? Like Scoot or Sharp would really have to be an elite level player for that to happen. But it's a good young core. I think they're going to be scrappy this year. And it's like they're going to be fun to watch. Like I feel better about Portland now than I have for the last 5-6 years. And a large part of that is because of what Matt and I have always criticized Cronin for, is they finally picked a rail. They picked a path and they're going down it.
In Portland too, if you're, a young player still trying to find your place in the league, Portland at least has minutes for you to earn.
Players aside, locationally, where would I want to be? Anywhere but fucking Portland. And maybe New Orleans. I would be worried about living in New Orleans because it's a bowl. But other than that, I'd be good to be like anywhere else. But I do not want to be up there. Like it's cloudy all the time. It's fucking raining. At least in Milwaukee, you can see the sun.
This sounds amazing to me because I love cloudy and rainy. Like it's going to be in the 50s here and cold all week next week. And I'm just like, I'm in heaven.
God, I wish.
The other thing though about the trade is like those Milwaukee future picks, I would want those. Because
you think?
If Giannis leaves before 2029 and I have an unprotected Milwaukee first, like I like having that pick a lot more than I like having a future Miami unprotected first. Because it's hard.
That is a long ways out.
It is
6 years.
Yeah. It is. You don't know what's going to happen. And the way that guys move around in the league nowadays, Giannis's contract is up before then. If he's not there, it's hard to build in those small markets. So like that pick probably has a lot more value than a Miami future first, where it's like, they might not have Jimmy, but they're going to have someone. The Heat are going to be good. The Heat have been bad like one time in the past 30 years, like bad. So I like those picks. I like what they came away with, and I like where they're going. I also just I think it's super interesting the way that player trade requests have kind of been curtailed in the last couple years, if that makes sense. Like we had this big player empowerment movement where the players are able to demand where they want to go and when.
I call that baby mode.
I like baby mode. So we had baby mode activate. And it seemed like the next step in baby mode was going to be that these guys could sign max deals, like super maxes, and then be like, okay, I signed my deal last year. I want out, and this is where I want to go, and you have to trade me there. And we've seen it. I kind of mentioned Daryl Morey and Sean Marks earlier on purpose because this really started with Ben Simmons, ironically, like funny enough, that he demanded a trade, and they're like, no, we're not going to do that until we get a trade we want. And they eventually get James Harden out of it.
I see what you're saying. I guess in like my mind, it's like the difference between these two is like, I think the organization had a little bit of an obligation to do right by Dame. Whereas like they could have fucking cared less where Ben Simmons went. Yeah. They could have shipped him off to Croatia and they would have been happy because he wouldn't be in their locker room anymore.
Well, the other big one though was Sean Marks with Kevin Durant. Where Durant signs the 4-year deal and he's like, I want to go to the Suns. And Sean Marks is like, they're not offering enough. You're going to play. And he plays. And then eventually, what's his face buys the Suns, the new owner. And he goes in his first day. He's like, why don't we have Kevin Durant trade Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, all of our first? We're getting Kevin Durant. Ishbia is the new owner. And so the Suns come back and they do give Sean Marks the deal he wants, because he waited and he was patient enough to be like, I know you're demanding a trade. I'm not giving in to you. I agree that there's some complications, but it kind of follows that model of like, why do I have to trade Dame right now? Because he asked me? Because he told me? I don't have to do anything. He's under contract. So we're kind of seeing a little bit of a curtailing of players' power, which I think that this is good for the league, that a guy can't sign a 4-year deal or a supermax and then be like, next year, okay, I want you to trade me to my preferred destination.
I would totally agree. The other thing that I would say is like, I think with a lot of that, you get dangerously close to like enabling people to have like a super entitled thing. And it's just like, again, if I was in that position, would there be places that I would want to go? Of course. But it's like, at the end of the day, I'm getting the max of the, whatever it is to play basketball. And it's like, well, I do want to win. I do want to do these other things. And I should be fortunate that I'm in the position that I'm in. Like, and that's how I see it. Obviously, like everybody's kind of got like a different attitude on that, but it's like, I think that there is some merit in the old conversations about like, well, we didn't trade for super teams, we built them with picks and with like putting in the work and like that kind of stuff. And it's fun to watch guys like get together and have these like powerhouses of teams, but it's also fun to watch them develop over time and like have some adversity. Maybe if James Harden would have had a little more adversity in the beginning of his career, he wouldn't be such a dingbat now.
Yeah, there is something to be said for the old school narrative of like this team is young and they're developing and they keep bumping their head against the glass ceiling and then they finally break through and get over the hump. Like we just saw it with Denver this season, right? Where it's been the same core together for a long time. They've been just trying to get there. They finally, something clicks. They finally get over the edge and it's kind of like, oh yeah, that was awesome. Everybody enjoyed it.
Well, it feels earned.
So yeah,
dude, they even overcame having Michael Porter Jr.
It's incredible. I mean, so the last part of this trade, Drew Holiday goes to the Celtics, and like I said, I don't think that they got appropriate value for Drew Holiday, and I think a large portion of that was that Cronin was like, "Hey, Pat Riley, watch this." I really like the fit for the Celtics. I still have concerns about any team that's led by Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as far as winning an NBA championship. But I look at what they did this offseason as a whole now, and I'm a lot more comfortable with this team than I was a week ago. They traded away Marcus Smart, who was an important defensive piece for them, kind of like that dog in the locker room. But I think basically replacing that spot with Drew Holiday is a major upgrade. Like I would be really excited about that if I was a Celtics fan.
Drew is pretty much exactly what we've been saying they need. They got themselves into trouble last year, especially in the playoffs, by just getting into like, all right, let's jack up a bunch of threes. Let's go into 3-point mode. That's not really his game anyways. And he's like a really, really great defender, which is, like something that they kind of just lost when they got rid of Marcus Smart. So they needed that rollback. But having someone who can come in, play point guard, and slow the team down and be like, no, you're not going to jack up a contested three. We're running the offense.
That's a hell of a four, honestly, is like Tatum, Brown, Drew Holiday, and Kristaps Porzingis. That probably the best four in the league right now. I mean, I guess you could put them up against Milwaukee's and say Dame, Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Brook Lopez. I don't know, like where else would you look? I guess maybe Phoenix, Booker, Durant.
Yeah.
Beal.
I think weighting wise, I think like you could reasonably expect Denver to match up decently with them too. Denver would have like a decent chance, but that's just because like Jokic is such a fucking dog.
That's the thing is like this whole week has been, oh, the Bucks are number one in championship odds. Oh, the Celtics are number one in championship odds. And we just completely ignored that, like, the Nuggets have Jokic still. And, like, sometimes you just have Jokic. And, like, if I'm the Nuggets, I'm just sitting back and I'm like, okay. I I guess if I was them, I'd be more worried about Milwaukee than I would be about Boston right now, just because Jokic is the best player on the planet. We had Giannis number 2 in our rankings. My point being, though, that like, yes, Jokic is better than Giannis, but like the gap between those guys is not as big as the gap between Damian Lillard and Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, then aside from I know it's not always a 1-for-1 in the NBA, but I'm like, okay, then I have Chris Middleton. I'd rather have Middleton than Michael Porter Jr. or Aaron Gordon. And I like Brooke Lopez. Like Lopez is probably the 8th guy in there. If you're doing a fantasy draft of like the 2 teams' top 4s, he's probably the last guy you pick, but I like him. He's got some mobility. He's got some rim protecting chops. So I think Milwaukee is now capable of taking on anybody in the league. And I'm just going to be super interested to see a Celtics versus Milwaukee series this year. And then I'm assuming it's one of those teams. Like, who do they play coming out of the West? I think Denver should still be the favorite, but like the West may be a bloodbath this year with like the top 10 teams in that division.
It always is.
Oof. Before we wrap up and Matt and I cover a little bit of NFL stuff here to end the podcast, any final thoughts on the trade or the landscape of the NBA?
Go Pistons.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them do well. Like they got a young core. I think they're going to be a fun team to play, fun team to watch. It'll be scrappy. So I think with the spotlight all over the other place, if they were able to come out and make a little bit of a splash at the beginning of the season, that would be fun.
With Dame now being in the same division as the Pistons, I'm kind of glad that he's already 33. So by the time they're actually like ready to arrive, he's on the backside of his career.
Clint, thank you for jumping on and joining us to talk through all this Dame trade stuff. We appreciate you being here. No problem, man.
I appreciate it. I hope the football season goes well for you guys. I did tell Matt that I was extremely disappointed that Aaron Rodgers blew his fucking Achilles out 4 plays into the game, because it's not fun ripping on the Jets when you know that they're just going to be awful. Like, I really wanted them to have Aaron Rodgers healthy and for them to still not do very well, so I could just talk copious amounts of shit. But yeah, now that's like kind of off the table. Now I want to see him do well with Zach Wilson, because like I want the babyface hero to have like a little bit of a break.
He played a good game Sunday night.
He's not a hero yet, but yeah.
What I will tell you is that Aaron Rodgers blew out his Achilles, and I still feel like the Jets are having a better season than my team so far. Matt is enjoying NFL, so
yes, for once.
But we're going to let Clint go, and then we're going to start talking some NFL Week 4. So, Clint, thank you, my friend. We will see you soon.
Have a good one, guys.
Man. Later.
All right, we are back, done with our little NBA excursion, ready to talk a little bit of football from Week 4 of the NFL season. I do want to warn all the fans that are here for football and that enjoy the NFL that the NBA season starts soon. And if the Kings get off to a good start and the Patriots continue down the road that they're going down right now, it's going to be real sketchy with how much football gets talked about on this podcast.
That's fair.
Yeah, no, I'm joking. I'm still enjoying the NFL season. We had a good Week 4. I said earlier in the intro that I thought it was a little bit of a weird Week 4 again. I just feel like we're seeing a lot of blowouts this season so far. We haven't seen a lot of like really excellent football games yet, so I hope that they're coming. But Matt and I are going to do Bolds and Scolds from Week 4 of the NFL season. If you don't remember, this is our new segment where we give you a player, a team, a coach, a unit, something that made a bold impact on Sunday. And then we're going to go over somebody that we would like to scold. Matt, I went first last week, so why don't you kick us off with your bold for Week 4?
I got a little carried away after Sunday night. I really did want to give Zach Wilson the bold. I do think he deserves some credit after playing that game, but having some time to think about it, was a much bolder statement made this week by one particular team, the Buffalo Bills. We definitely gave them the business after week one when they not just figuratively, but literally dropped the ball against the Jets and had no business losing that game and found a way to do it anyways. They played the Miami Dolphins this week, who are coming off scoring 70 points, albeit against, tissue paper of a defense. But still, 70 points is 70 points. Not only did they hold them to 20 points, but they just dominated that game from beginning to end. This is the team that everyone has been waiting to see. This is what everyone knows that team is capable of, but they just don't do it. So now you got to do this every week.
During the AFC East preview podcast, the big narrative we talked about was that everybody was saying, oh, the Bills Super Bowl window is shut, or is it closing?
Yeah.
And after week one, it was just like, yeah, it's time to pile on. Like Josh Allen had a horrible game.
Yeah.
He's turning into a turnover machine. Here's all these stats about turnovers. He's been incredible in the last couple weeks. And now they fly to London to play a Jacksonville team that's been struggling. Like they could easily go over there and keep rolling.
Yeah. I mean, to Jacksonville's credit, they got back on track this week. So it's also going to be in London. So Jacksonville's at home.
Jacksonville home game. Yeah, Jacksonville got back this week with a win over the Falcons in London, but they still just don't look right.
No.
Especially not offensively. We expected them to be a much more explosive offense, and I haven't seen what I've wanted to see out of them so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I do think for Miami too, I'm working on a theory, and we'll do like the big debut theory sometime on the podcast, but this season so far, it seems like every time a team is getting smoke blown up their ass, they instantly get destroyed or they instantly lose their next game.
Happened to the Lions.
Yeah, so like the Lions beat the Chiefs week one. Everybody's talking about, we're going to the Super Bowl. We're all drinking the blue Kool-Aid. They come back and they lose to Seattle. Dallas versus Arizona. Dallas was like getting talked about after 2 weeks as like, oh man, maybe they're actually a Super Bowl contender this year. They get humbled by Arizona. Going into this week, everybody was talking about Cleveland's defense, and rightfully so, because they'd been so incredible through the first 3 weeks of the season. And we even hyped them up on the podcast for like, oh God, we got to keep an eye on these guys. And then Lamar just eviscerates them on Sunday. We talked about Miami, even the Ravens like a week ago. They beat Cincinnati in week 2, and everybody's like, we've never seen Lamar control the game the way that he does this year. And then they lose to the Colts. So I think what we got to start doing is finding like the big favorites who are getting hyped up going into the week and bet against them, because I just see it happening. I really fought yesterday with who I wanted to put in this spot, because there was 2 guys who I just thought had incredible individual defensive performances this week. My bold is going to go to Kahlil Mack, the edge rusher for the LA Chargers. 6 sacks this week in their win over the Las Vegas Raiders, tied for the second most in a single game in NFL history. Somehow Derek Thomas had 7 one time, which is stunning because like 6 is a shitload of sacks. Kahlil Mack is now tied for the league lead. Kahlil had no sacks going into this game. It is now tied with TJ Watt and Josh Allen for the most sacks in the league with 6. So absolutely dominant performance for him. Also had 2 forced fumbles and a pass deflection in that game. Like, for a dude who dominated for as long as he did, like, he's not the same guy anymore. But this was probably like his best career game as an individual performance. So props to him. I do want to give a shout out to the other guy I was thinking about, though. One of my guys from the NFL draft, Seahawks rookie cornerback Devin Witherspoon. A pick 6, 2 sacks.
Yeah.
in a win against the Giants on Monday night. Like incredible performance for him too. And I think it was only his second or his third career game because he missed week 1.
Yeah. Watching that game too, so much similarity to Brian Branch in that, like, in this one particular way, that like he's always by the ball. He's just always by the ball all the time.
The Seahawks defense we've seen like really this week against the Giants and kind of a little bit last week, but I feel like they're starting to round into shape with Witherspoon playing more.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. I just like, I was debating, I was like, God, that's such a 2 sacks and a pick 6 for a corner is such a good performance. And that's normally who I would give it to. But Kahlil Mack just like over the top, 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, a pass defended. Yeah. They kept talking about how it was a revenge game for Kahlil Mack because it was against the Raiders, the team that drafted him. But he hasn't played for the Raiders since 2017, and he's played them 5 times since then. When does it stop being a revenge game?
I think he's revenged out.
Yeah, I was like, this isn't a revenge game anymore. He's not even playing the last team that he played for.
If anything, he definitely owes Josh McDaniel a couple of beers because I don't think he did Aiden O'Connell any favors in protecting him.
Josh McDaniels is bad. Like, we should have bet on him for first coach fired this season. Yeah. I tried to warn people, man, don't hire from the Belichick tree. Just don't do it. It's never worked in the history of the NFL. It's never worked.
In the history of ever.
Why would you do it? Who is your scold for week 4?
Mike Tomlin, because he cannot keep letting Matt Canada get away with this shit. 6 points against the Texans. 6. You want to know how many of them were in the first half? None.
I was going to say it's either none or it's 6. I'm waiting to see. Yeah, your scold actually kind of ties into mine. My scold was the entire AFC North outside of Baltimore.
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Cincinnati lost their games on Sunday by a combined score of 85-12. Matt Canada's offense scored the most points out of those 3 teams that I mentioned. They scored 6. Cleveland lost to Baltimore 28-3. Cincinnati, who we're like 4 weeks in, we talked about picks that we were going to regret the most on this podcast. I think that picking Cincinnati to win the Super Bowl might be my pick I regret the most already.
Yeah, I mean, it's already starting to hurt to pick them to win the division.
Yeah, Joe Burrow, 165 yards against a Titan secondary that we talked about being one of the worst in the league. I thought for sure this was like the narrative bounce back week for Cincinnati, where it's like, okay, they started 0-2. They got that win over the Rams. Now they go in and they get back to 2-2, and this is where they start going. Yeah, smashed by Ryan Tannehill on Sunday.
The thing is that Titan, as bad as that Titan secondary is, that defensive line is that good. So it's just, if you get there fast enough, it don't matter.
I may or may not have had a large bet on the Cincinnati Bengals this weekend, and I was just watching the score, and I was like, "Fucking Vrabel, man!" Yeah, God, it's like they get killed by Cleveland last week, and then they come back, and it's like, it was tough. But yeah, I mean, Canada was horrible again on Sunday. Like, Kenny Pickett looks like he might be one of the only quarterbacks I wouldn't replace Mac Jones with. Kenny Pickett looks so bad.
Yeah. Well, what's going through my head watching this too is like, we've seen him play better than this. This is feeling a lot like Jared Goff playing under God, what was that old Rams coach? Pre-Sean McVay.
Jeff Fisher.
The entire offense is just set up to fail.
This is another pet theory I'm working on, and we'll delve into it more, but I think there are 2 types of quarterbacks you should never draft in the NFL draft. quarterbacks who have had one good season in college. That's like the Trubisky's and the Trey Lances and like those type of
Right.
guys where they have like this one season and you're like, we're gonna draft him based on that. The other is like when a quarterback falls to you in the draft, I don't know if I would be excited to have that guy anymore. That's like the
Well,
Kenny Pickett, the Mac Jones, the
Lamar Jackson happened.
yeah, but that's the exception that proves the rule, Matt. No, and I know, like we could pick out exceptions. We could say like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, well Patrick Mahomes fell to 10th, but it's like the Chiefs felt like they needed to be aggressive and move up and grab
Yeah.
Mahomes. You know, when you have someone like Kenny Pickett, who's just like, okay, 21 other teams passed on him, or like Mac Jones, who it's like, yeah, there was other teams that needed quarterbacks and they picked other positions instead of him. I'm not saying don't take him. I'm just saying like maybe you shouldn't be super excited to be like, oh man, we were at 15 and we got Mac Jones. Because you see how that's going. But if I was the Ravens, I would
Yeah.
feel pretty darn good after Sunday. Like you just smushed Cleveland. And I know
Yep.
Watson didn't play and that DTR just looked like he had never played football before in his life.
Well, when your first start is against the Ravens, yeah,
What was Stefanski doing on Sunday? He's just like, you know what? We're just gonna let DTR go out there and rip it.
I think he's lost because he doesn't have Nick Chubb to like hand the ball off to a million times, but then not give it to him when he needs to give it to him the most.
Yeah, I mean, he really needs that like safety blanket to know, like, hey, you're gonna carry us all the way through the game, except for when it matters, and then I'm gonna let DTR rip it. Last thing before we sign off here, the eliminator pool pick. We had San Francisco last week. Good pick as we survived. Overall, really quiet week after like the culling that had happened the previous week.
Yeah.
Only 4.6% of the contestants were eliminated, so just about 5%. The worst pick was Pittsburgh, who had 2.18% of the vote. I wanted to mention, too, another good day for Stroud against Pittsburgh's D.
Yeah.
306 yards, 2 touchdowns. Monster game for Nico Collins.
Yeah.
176 yards, 2 TDs.
Yeah. It does help when the other team's offense never stays on the field. You just keep getting opportunities.
It's fair. So for this week, I think we have 2 really good choices. And I think I know where we're going to go, but I'll let you know what the choices are. We have the Detroit Lions, the Motor City Kitties, at home for the Carolina Panthers. Lions with a statement win over Green Bay on Thursday, asserting their dominance in the NFC North. Another team that's got to be feeling pretty darn good about where they're at after 4 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Or the Dolphins at home for the Giants.
Oof.
Giants. I said this before the season. I want to give myself credit. Is I was like, they're going to be 1-6 at best this season with the schedule that they have.
Yeah.
Maybe it gets a little bit better with Aaron Rodgers going down because I think they have the Jets coming up soon, but they look bad with a capital B.
I don't understand why Dable is letting anyone other than himself touch the play sheet at this point. Because the reports are that like every time the offense is like revved back up and they like start to make a comeback in these games where they're shitting the bed, he's taking over the play calling again.
Something has to change there very quickly because it has spiraled out of control so far.
Yeah. I don't know how you can not pick against the Giants.
So my initial pick here was the Lions against the Panthers. I think it's a nice revenge spot for a Panthers team that's looked pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I hate to play this game. This is against one of the rules, but if we pick the Lions against the Panthers this week, we get to pick Miami at home against the Panthers next week.
Okay. I see where you're going there.
You gotta be a little strategic now that we've used a couple teams. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I just want to pick the best team we can against the worst team we can.
Yeah. No,
Honestly,
I mean,
Lions over Panthers might be the best team that we can against the worst team we can.
yeah, I mean, I feel good about taking the Lions. I mean, when you read that one off, I kind of assumed that was going to be where I was going to lean. And then I heard the Giants and I was like, I mean, they're especially after Miami just like getting their asses kicked. I wouldn't be surprised if they put up 70 on New York.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing, is like nice bounce back spot for them this week. But
I also fully expect Detroit to come in and have the same intent in this game as they did against Green Bay.
Yeah, this is a big revenge spot after Carolina mollywopped you guys at the end of the season last year and kept you out of the playoffs. So I think Carolina with Frank Reich has just looked absolutely horrible so far this season. So I feel like it's a good spot for the Kitties.
Right.
So we're locking in the Detroit Lions. Other football game of note this weekend, aside from the fact that the Dallas Cowboys play the 49ers on Sunday Night Football, we play each other in fantasy for the first time this season.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, in the East League.
I have not felt good about fantasy all year, but like I'm doing okay.
Yeah, we're playing in the East League, which is where the worst of your two teams is. Your West Team League seems to be doing much better, so I'm thankful that it's in this league. My team's been up and down. I scored like 60 and then 120 and then 89 and then 120. So we'll see how this weekend goes. But that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Twitter at Fouled Out Sports. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matador_defense. And you can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. MLB playoffs started today. College football schedule, not phenomenal, not super deep this weekend, but we have the Red River Shootout on Saturday. Number 12 Oklahoma versus number 3 Texas at noon. It is just the third time that both teams have been 5-0 or better going into this game. They're both 5-0. The only other two times were in 08 and 02. So, hyped up game. Texas beat Oklahoma 49-0 last year. Oklahoma looks a lot better so far this season. So hopefully this is more competitive and we get back to having a fun game, because that's usually one of my favorite games to watch every year.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is like next year, the conferences are all jumbled up. They're all scattered.
This is like the last time it's going to be a Big 12 game. They're going to play each other, but it'll be like an SEC game.
Yeah.
Going forward. So
it's real weird.
A little weird. So enjoy that on Saturday. Kentucky plays Georgia on Saturday. Georgia's kind of been begging for a loss, and Kentucky's undefeated so far. So that could be a little bit of fun. Like Notre Dame plays Louisville, which is a ranked game. Not phenomenal, but next week, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. Oh, baby. USC versus Notre Dame and Oregon versus Washington. It's going to be a banger. But until then, Matt and I will be back next Wednesday with the results from our fantasy matchup, as well as a review of week 5 of the NFL season. Everybody enjoy the MLB playoffs. Hockey starts soon. Basketball starts soon. NFL and college football are in full gear. It is like one of the best times of the year to be a sports fan, and we are here to break it all down for you guys. Matt, my friend, I will see you soon.
Later.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, Robin.
Bye, Mom.